Well, we all know that the world we once knew has gone perhaps forever. Much has changed and will continue to. But what has not changed is human nature itself. Be it the way we react as a species to the unknown or to an existential threat that we cannot quite comprehend as yet in its entirety. Once again, we have arrived at the colossal frontiers of the human race's collective knowledge, and it is sobering to be reminded that what do we not know is much loftier than what we do know, be it about our own selves or this megacosm that we live in. The matter of fact that there is no end in sight to the COVID-19 crisis does not really prevent us from making prognosis of what a post-COVID-19 world would bear a resemblance to. Nonetheless, before we get too involved in the contours of post-pandemic planetary, we first need to think about where are we headed as a post-pandemic populace. Yes, there will be an overt pandemonium as nations scramble for advantage in the world order as the pandemic recedes. But we need to be more concerned at this point of time with the social and economic churning underway within the confines of our own country, accentuated and aggrandized by the COVID-19 crisis. The role that India plays in the post-pandemic world order will be determined by the way we confront and emerge from the current catastrophe. This in turn depends on certain fundamental factors: the quality of leadership, the quality of administration at all levels, the robustness of institutional frameworks, the quality of healthcare, and our social coherence as people. The Multidisciplinary International Conference, organized by St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, sponsored by ICSSR in collaboration with CSI and DST on 18th and 19th February, had been one such platform for many scholars who operously worked on the research and presented their papers in various sessions.
We at Xavier's pride ourselves as a domain equipped with intellects, discerning the future in a ritualistic yet contemporary way. Naturally, the world as we know it has been propelling towards uncharted territories. We can sit and perhaps implore questions of its prospects, henceforth foreseeing a reoriented basis of action. Greetings to the distinguished gathering. Today I, Vanshika Shekhawat,
And I, Madhukar Nair,
feel gratified to welcome you to this academic affair, the Multidisciplinary International Conference 2022 on the concept of emerging new world order in the post-pandemic scenario. Before taking a step further, I'd like to extend a welcome to our esteemed panelists, Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Dr. Pankaj Anand, and Ms. Sadhna Garg. We are also honored to have Reverend Father Arokya Swami, SJ, Rector and Manager, Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo, SJ, Principal, Reverend Father Raymond Carabin, Administrator and Vice Principal, and our esteemed faculty members and students. Today we have amidst us an eminent panel of academicians and researchers, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce them to the attendees. As the first panelist, we have Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Director, Kanoria PG Mahila Mahavidyalaya, Jaipur. She qualified from the University of Rajasthan in 1974 and thereafter completed her PhD in American literature. She worked as a lecturer and then went on to become the principal at Kanoria PG Mahavidyalaya. She has penned various publications and projects solicit, unveiling womanhood, breaking through the disciplines, and many more. She has been a member of the American Council on Education since 2001. She has received an assortment of accolades such such as the Fulbright Fellowship in Administration in Higher Education and the Katha Award for Translation and an award in directing for the play Komal Gandhar. Now, I would like to request Reverend Father Arogya Swami, SJ, Rector and Manager, to extend a green greeting to Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi. Thank you, Father.
Next, we have Dr. Pankajanam, Senior Consultant, Internal Medical and Critical Care Fortis. He is a proud alumnus of Xavier's and he has done his MBBS from SMS Medical College, Jaipur. Thereafter, he has passed his MD in Internal Medicine from JLN Medical College, Ajmer. He has published research papers of great prominence in his field. Furthermore, he has also penned a textbook of general medicine for undergraduate students called The Basic Guidelines in Medicine. I hereby request Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo S.J., our principal, to proffer a green sapling to Dr. Pankajan. Thank you, Father.
Ms. Sadhna Garg, Chairperson, Raghukull Trust, is a social entrepreneur and philanthropist. She is an alumnus of Kanuriya College, University of Rajasthan. Raghukull Trust is an NGO operating since 1992 with children of performing communities. She is also involved with documenting heritage crafts of posterity for the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Moreover, she is the founding head of the Jaipur chapter of Sari Speak, a global presence that promotes saris across nations. Additionally, she has also founded a brand that produces hand-woven and hand-block printed saris and apparel, Rasika. Now, I would like to request Reverend Father Raymond Kerabin, SJ, Vice Principal, to present a green sapling to Ms. Sadhna Garg. Thank you, Father. It is a pleasure to have such distinguished dignitaries amongst us as the panelists for the day.
The treasure of a nation lies within its savants and scholars. The learner always begins by finding faults and failures, but the scholar sees the positive and promising merits in everything. Today we have one such sagacious scholar amongst us to pave the way and set the tone by illuminating this rostrum. It is our profound privilege to have Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo, Principal St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, as the facilitator for the panel discussion. Father has an ever young heart because he still takes himself as a scholar in every facet and field of life. He has an outlook of optimism towards life and things around his vicinity. He strongly believes in the ideology of walking with the excluded. Also stating, Father had been associated with Oxford University as part of his research methodology in English language for socially disadvantaged people. Father, it is our honor to have you as our guiding beacon, our principal, and today as the moderator for this session. With this, I would request our dignitaries to kindly occupy their seats on the stage. Hello. Hello. Check. To begin with the panel discussion, I humbly request Father to take over the proceedings further from this point.
Good afternoon to the eminent panelists and Reverend Father Rector, Reverend Father Vice Principal, esteemed members of the staff and my beloved students. Karl Marx once said, the philosophers have only interpreted the world, but the point is to change it. Down the centuries, so many people have come forward to interpret, giving their perspectives, their views, their opinions on several issues. But the problem is those issues continue to stay. And in fact, they become worse and worse day by day. To add to our worries, now we have the pandemic. The greatest damage that the pandemic has done is definitely not on the economy or health. It is on the human spirit. Relationships have been affected. Mental health has been affected. Familial cordiality has gone into thin air. As a result, today we have people, as psychologists define all of us are normally abnormal people. Today this pandemic has made us as abnormally abnormal people. But the human spirit also has got the spirit of resurgence. Whenever there is a calamity, there is a time the human spirit collects itself with the support of one another from the society. There is a resurgence. As a result, there is always a victory over the evil. We have taken a very beautiful topic, emerging new world order in the post-pandemic scenario. We have also in our midst an educationist, a medical professional, and also an entrepreneur. After a lot of discussions, Dr. Dharavi, Dr. Magua, and Dr. Ankita Rathore and others have decided that these are the areas which we have to concentrate on, because we are not worried about the past, we are concerned about the present, but we are optimistic about the future. With this few thoughts, we are going to have a futuristic perspective today. With my brief interaction with these eminent people, I have found one thing common, that they all have concern for humanity, which they express in different ways in their respective professions. Therefore, it's our duty and privilege to listen to their views. It's my great privilege to invite Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, a great educationist, to speak on the impact of COVID in educational sector. Over to Dr. Rashmi.
Good afternoon, all the participants. First, I would like to thank Xavier's College, Reverend Father Principal, Reverend Father Vice Principal, and Father Rector to invite me and for giving me this opportunity to speak on education as it is emerging. Now when I am addressing you here, this age, this epoch is likely to be declared Anthropocene. This Anthropocene UNESCO had set up one committee to decide on whenever there is a climate change, whenever there are changes on Earth because of climate change. We have known these periods as geological age of the Earth, like the Ice Age. So the present age is likely to be declared Anthropocene age. And by Anthropocene, it is meant that there would be climate changes, and the changes which are likely to be affected are by human beings, by civilization, in the name of development. While we were still contemplating whether this is an age of Anthropocene or not, and for which UN agencies could not declare that so far as an age of Anthropocene, but there came Corona. And Corona is a watershed in civilization also and in climate change also. Because when you dislocate animals, naturally, when you dislocate animals, they would come in touch with civilization. They would come in contact with human beings. And naturally, the virus, Corona, which as Dr. Pankaj would tell you, that they have been studying this for ages, that there has been a virus called Corona. But it has come now in this age because the habitat or the natural habitat of bats was claimed by human beings. So naturally, they had to move out of their habitat and they came in touch with human beings and they infected human beings with this virus. And this is how, we will not argue on whether this was made in a lab in China or where, but this has happened. Whatever has been the cause, this has happened. Now, even before Corona, higher education was grappling with one challenge. This was confronted with one challenge, and that challenge was the post-secondary unorganized sector. Because the education system that we have till now is about 200 years old. It has evolved in 200 years. And this came into existence after Industrial Revolution. And whether we agree or not, this is a fact that the masters of economy decide the education pattern. We may have our own views on education, but the market forces have always decided what kind of education students and children in society would have. Now, as a result of that, because Industrial Revolution, the masters of Industrial Revolution, they believed in process and in time. Because for them, an assembly line was more important than anything else. Now, the idea of this assembly line percolated in the education system also, and as a result, the process and time became very important, and as a result of that, we have 3 years education and 5 years education and 2 years for post-graduation, and the time-bound programs are because of the Industrial Revolution. And suddenly, in the early 21st century, digital economy came, and this the industrial education could not cope up with the digital economy. And because their crevices were created between school and college, and that crevice was that there was, because of digital economy, a new kind of job avenue opened up. And colleges were taking a lot of time to prepare students for that particular job. And the education policy, the old education policy was also more time bound and believed more in process. Whereas the new digital economy, the education that they wanted was learner's outcome. It has to be based on outcome, not so much on process, not so much on time. And as a result of that, the unorganized post-secondary sector, which is now you can see in the market, 6 months courses, 1 year courses, and these students, although these centers are not recognized by any educational agency, yet these are the students who are getting jobs. So it became very difficult even for educational system to cope up with this challenge because our system was different and we could not introduce experiments and innovations very fast. It took us a lot of time even to introduce one change in the system. And as when NEP came, the new education policy in India, but after that came Corona. So that had a set pattern. And suddenly we realized that it has also not addressed certain issues, which it should have. But at that point, they did not realize that such a watershed moment will come in the life of civilization and in the life of education. So they have also not addressed the time-bound programs. The seat time, for them, the seat time is more important, the process is more important than the learning outcome. And so the education now has to be based on the learning outcome in place of the time-bound programs. And when there was a conference in Arizona State University where President Bush and Barack Obama, the likes of them addressed that conference. And you would be surprised to know that the majority of participants in that were from that private unorganized sector. And when two research scholars, they contacted all of them and they wanted to know what kind of education can you envisage in future. So they said, the system that we have is flourishing. And the universities, especially the state universities, are receding to oblivion. And even the president of Harvard University said that there would come a time when these universities and colleges will close down and there would be a great financial crunch for them. So this is how the universities in US and Germany and even in England realized that we'll have to incorporate these elements in our study system. And now, after that, we have online education, even before Corona. We had online education, distance education, short-term courses, job-oriented courses, and although they all became parts of credit for a degree. And this is how even the private sector has changed the state-owned universities, the scene in the state-owned universities, and whatever they were offering is now being offered by the organized educational system. As when Corona came, we know that it came as a sudden shock, especially to the educational sector, because students were not familiar with online teaching, online learning. Teachers were not familiar with online teaching. So everything had to happen very quickly. Teachers had to be trained, students had to be told how to take their classes. But this happened only in the major cities of the country. This education did not reach out to the people where it should go. It did not go to the margins. And so inequality, that education we have always known as a bulwark against inequality. This has resisted inequality and this has mitigated inequality. But because of Corona, this inequality increased. Now there are two sections, completely segregated from each other. Another challenge that we had was time lag. Two years that the students have lost out on. When a student of 12th class, 3 years back, whatever he learned, the student 2 years after that could not learn that. So there is a time lag of 2 years, and UNESCO in fact has set up a committee which has suggested 9 working models, 9 action steps which the institutions should take in order to mitigate that time lag. So our challenge is now how to counter that unorganized sector which is getting jobs for students, and also the 2-year time lag which the students have, because you must be reading in the newspapers also that there would be a generation which would not be as mature as the generation 3-4 years back would be. So we know that this time lag would cause a lot of problem for the times to come, and the digital economy, which is now the guiding force, will decide the future of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, for the wonderful and pithy way of presenting the problem. You have rightly pointed out that we have been aping the ancient, the British system, which the Lord Macaulay system, as we call it, which they have implemented for the sake of running their business, we continue to follow without understanding the ground reality. Now, the NEP has come, and I am not very sure how far they are going to address the question of inequality. Now, there are some questions addressed to Dr. Rashmi. Very often we hear that thanks to the digitalization of education, campuses are going to vanish. People are spending crores of rupees to develop beautiful campuses, but I am told continuously that in 5 to 10 years, campuses are going to be out of the focus. Everything will be online. How do you visualize the type of education? Everything completely online, because everything is digitalized. Our kitchen is digitalized, hospitals are digitalized. Every aspect of our life has been digitalized. Can we afford to leave education alone, away from the impact of digitalization? If we have to go for digitalization, to what extent?
Digital economy will decide now the course of education also, but at the same time, the casualty would be humanities, social sciences, the understanding of society, which submerges into the sensibility of a student through meeting people, through understanding the text, through the teacher, because teacher is an experienced person. So through the experience of the teacher, looking through the lens of other students, parents, neighbors, and other people in the society. Now, if we become digital completely, then like work from home. Now, work from home, what kind of society do we have after everybody is working from home? Do we really have a society then? When we say man is a social being, man is a social animal, so social would be out, only animal would remain. So that's why the role of teacher will never go out, because teacher is required. The text delivery is all right, that can happen digitally. But teachers is required to make students understand, to make them feel, to make them realize what their fellow beings are and what society requires from them. And when this is a privilege to come to a school and study. Now, what in return can they give to the society? There the role of teacher comes. So I think without a teacher, digitally, course content can be delivered, but we cannot make human beings. We cannot make social human beings.
Okay, thank you, madam. One more question from what you have said. No, the companies are looking for finished products even from educational institutions, whereas educationalists are interested in making human beings with some values like compassion, character, competence. So there seems to be a mismatch between what the educational institutions deliver and what the industries are looking for from educational institutions. The typical mindset of any industrialist is a packaged item. A student after the college or the university comes, immediately he has to be pigeonholed into a particular job where you should start functioning from day one to make more profit for them. On the other hand, educational institutions, we struggle to create authentic human beings with a good character. So there seems to be a mismatch. In this process, companies cry that 70% of the products whom you produce are unemployable. I think the number will even go higher, 80%, some people say 90% of the people, because the traditional jobs are going to vanish. We are not going to have drivers because we are having autonomous cars very soon. So drivers will go, clerks will go, accountants will go, receptionists will go, programmers will go, because we are going to have, the computer will receive minimal inputs, collect data by itself, and then process the data and then deliver the judgment. So where is the role of the human being except switching on the machine? So in this context, what are the new types of employment opportunities which these guys will have in future?
There is one study which says that for one robot, 3.3 human beings will lose job. Now, this is for one robot, and robot can be manufactured at any rate. So where would the human beings go? That is the great question. But I feel that if the universities, the liberal education system, if that incorporates, like in NEP, they have been trying to incorporate the job avenues, preparing people for jobs. But preparing people for jobs is not the only criterion for which the institutions work. The institution, as Father Principal has said, institutions work to prepare social human beings who would carry the civilization forward. And that is why, unless this job avenue, this system, unless this comes mainstream, unless this comes in the university system, and it becomes a part of, like when IITs were set up, it was compulsory for all those students to study one humanities or social science subject. This did not happen for other technical institutions. This did not happen when other engineering institutions were made. They were, although there is a little part, but that is language, which is for communication, and that's why there has to be now a system which is a comprehensive system and which emphasizes humanities, subjects of humanities, social sciences, and because Father Principal also belongs to literature, I would say, without reading literature, you can never become a good human being. So that should be that should be made a part of any kind of curriculum that you have. When BCA and BBA were being introduced in this university, then also, because I was there on the committee which was deciding on this, then I said, if you have BCA, but IITs, the students of IIT study economics, sociology, literature, all other things. But your BCA student would study for 3 years and would have nothing other than computers. But finally that happened that they have only computers with them and only a little English for communication. So this system will have to change, and the problem is that the deciding people are the old generation people. And the policy makers are from old generation, those who have been trained on industrial educational policies. And now we need young generation, leaders from the young generation to decide what kind of education would be better for the future of the country.
Thank you, madam. We will have some questions from the audience at the end. It was Paulo Freire who said, I am not free till the last person in the society is free. I am because we are. Now, we will listen to Ms. Sadhana Khan, a social entrepreneur, a chairperson, and she has alerted me that she is also a journalist. Now, a terrific combinations. Madam, the social engineering in India has suffered a lot from the beginning. And religions also, all religions, have also played a role sometimes, most of the time constructive, at times also destructive. Now in this context, especially what type of world will you envisage in the future, in the post-COVID scenario?
Thank you, Father. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, firstly, yes. Okay. Firstly, thank you for having me here. It is indeed a great pleasure. Also, it was a pleasure listening to Dr. Chaturvedi's address. We go back very many years, and I can tell you she has been a great teacher in Kanodia, because I also am an ex-alumni of Kanodia. So to Father's question, that how do I envisage the coming world? I personally feel that from a teaching world, all of us will have to move towards a learning world. So far, we had teachers who gave the course content. We had teachers with whom we had a personal interaction and interface. That will all, it has already changed. It is further going to change more radically. But don't get scared. I'm a great believer. I'm a die-hard optimist. In fact, I'm an incurable optimist. And I feel that we still have good days ahead. Firstly, I totally agree with Dr. Chaturvedi when she says there is a digital divide in the country today. Earlier, we did have a lot of divides. You know, there was gender inequality, there was income inequality, there was social inequality, and now we have to cope with another one, which is digital divide. But there's no reason to lose heart. As a journalist, I can tell you, if somebody had said to me 3 years ago that you will only be doing online or telecom interviews and filing interviews, I would not have believed them. But it has all happened within a short span of 2 years. And you know, one thing nice about COVID is every journalist, I'm talking of women journalists, who was called a bossy journalist, suddenly we was being addressed as leaders. Why? Because the ones who were agile, the ones who learned fast, the ones who upskilled themselves with the digital world and its demands were and are in a greater demand today. So as I see, the world will always look for people who are upskilling. Gone are those times, as Dr. Chaturvedi said, when you can just rely on course content and be happy, get a degree and get a job. There will always be jobs. I refuse to believe that human society, look at it this way. You know, about 5 years ago, we were seeing our neighbors less. We were also busy working from office to home. It was a grind. But what has the corona done to us? Corona has brought new areas and new tools for social interaction. Of course, it is not face-to-face. The Facebook, the WhatsApp, the Instagram. I mean, now you know your friend who's in Mexico holidaying in Africa in a minute, you know. So that is the upside of it. Of course, the downside, as she said, is that we will always need human mentoring. But I don't see why we cannot have human mentoring on a digital platform. It has happened. People have sought, in post-corona world, people have sought doctors. Dr. Anand will tell you how the medical healthcare system underwent a sea change. Now you have somebody sitting in Antarctica or say in America seeking his advice in Jaipur because we are all online. Of course, these are challenges, but post-corona challenges, it is also true, let me tell you, the Sherry Blair Foundation says for women to become equal to men with all things remaining constant, which means that men don't progress anymore, only the women progress. Women will need 268 years. It is all on Google, you can check. These are not my figures. But that cannot happen. Men as humans will progress. So what women need to do in a post-corona world, I think, is they need to start running faster while standing at the same place. It's a dichotomy, but every era in human races progress has called for special challenges. I know when the remote TV came in, my grandmother almost had a cardiac arrest. She couldn't believe that, you know, sitting so many feet away, you could put on a TV and switch it off. So we all need to upgrade and upskill. Now, coming to women entrepreneurs and the social sector, as I see it, you know, corona, I mean, no pandemic is gender neutral, and corona was not. It has taken a higher toll on women. I mean, it is for all to see. I see majorly there are women in the audience. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you are working from home, how many of you have worked from home? Put up your hands. Wonderful. Most have. So how about the men? Haven't they worked from home? Why aren't the men putting up their hands? आपने कहाँ से काम किया पिछले 2 साल? See, that's gender equality. They don't want to put up their hands and say, I worked from. Well, anyway, for all those women who have worked from home, the pressure to deliver has been many, many more folds. Firstly, the collapse of a support system, whether it was in terms of domestic staff or a daycare center, or even medically, because medically people were not coming. Doctors, and you know, supposing a compounder was coming in to administer some treatment to an aged couple, he wasn't doing that anymore. So that kind of pressure has been on women. So women were fighting, they were multitasking, and they were fighting on very many fronts. It was work, it was kitchen, it was children, because the children were not going to school, and of course it was also their work. Unfortunately, it became a seamless world, non-ending world. I found, even as a journalist, I found we were working, we were giving in more hours than we did when we physically went to the office. Because suddenly, everyone felt that you were sitting at home and you should be delivering more. I don't know whether it happened with you all. Did your deadlines become more and more? Working hours stretched into dinner time. That was one thing. Also, the post-corona world, the new normal, so to say, I have to tell you this, that women entrepreneurs were struggling because, you know, entrepreneur is very good, but now I call them sole entrepreneurs. Sole entrepreneurs are the ones who are conducting, carrying businesses on their own and making a go of it. Now in India, as in anywhere else, the unorganized sector is 64% of the total workforce. Women are mostly employed in the unorganized sector. So what had happened was the unorganized sector collapsed. You know, the crafts, the salons, the boutiques, the gyms, even the restaurants were closed. So there was, of course, joblessness for women. It was a hard time, economically also. But when we revived, when the new normal came in, what had happened is that there was a cash crunch. Women had no idea how to gauge what the demand would be, because their clients who had also faced the same problem, Father, do I have time? Okay. Because their clients who also faced the same problem had repurposed their shrunk resources. See, if I'm a buyer and my husband's salary, which all of us who were in that bracket, we all faced a salary cut, you know. So if my salary and my disposable income became less, I had to reallocate my resources accordingly. So what had happened is, for women entrepreneurs, there was no guarantee of demand. We were all struggling when the COVID normal guidelines, COVID guidelines were done away with. We were all struggling to gauge what the market would throw up. But as I say, the human spirit is indomitable. I have great hopes, and humans have survived all these centuries. I'm very hopeful we will survive some more, hopefully not many more eras like this. But another good thing that happened was, there are statistics, and these are not mine, that digital India, though there was a divide, in the rural sector, it is the women who took the lead and upskilled them. Not many of them had smartphones. They borrowed, they went to the banks, and they bought, some of them even bought smartphones on an installment basis from wherever they could manage. Now the statistics are that 33% of the rural force is using smartphones more than what it did pre-COVID times, and the internet usage has also gone up. So these are healthy signs. Now, to a very relevant point that Dr. Chaturvedi and Father emphasized, that are we humans just going to stay being animals? And the social part will go, but I don't think that will ever happen. We find gratification, we seek companionship, we seek endorsement, and we hold hands on a digital platform. Tell me, how many of you go on WhatsApp to share with your friends your thoughts and your forwards? Put up your hands. See, put up your hands. All those who go on WhatsApp, don't you exchange your emotions, your events, your happenings in life? So, as I see it, the world is going to be different. It will never be the same again, but I have a great hope for the future. I was telling, we were all there, and I said something which is not to scare you, but I personally feel anyone who does not upskill, anyone who does not digitize, anyone who does not become a part of the digital revolution will very soon be like a dinosaur. Now, that is not to do with the medical or the education. I'm only talking about businesses. Of course, it's a fact. I still have clients who come home and say, I need to feel a sari, because the red color on the screen is different from the red color in the physical world. But slowly and gradually, I think we will need to digitize at a greater space, and yet, for down the ages, poets have been the legislatures, the unacknowledged legislatures of the world. I look at it that way. The human spirit will always need literature, psychology, and the finer points. Another thing that happened in the COVID world was, and especially for women, there was insomnia. I cannot tell you how many stories we had in the press of, it was like another pandemic that was happening. You know, error, sleep not found. It was something like that. People went to bed, and especially women went to bed while their minds were racing. So these are challenges that we all have to cope up, and I'm sure the health, Dr. Anand will tell you how we can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for wonderfully presenting a very optimistic perspective of the women and their role in the post-scenario, pandemic scenario. Now, my direct question is, you have beautifully enumerated the role of women that has been played all along. Now tell us, in the post-COVID scenario, with all the good things we have heard and seen, do you think in India the status of women will improve?
Absolutely. You know, I want to tell you one thing. Don't listen to the naysayers. Every woman, when I step out on the street, I find my vegetable vendor, you know, she will tell me, buy Paytm karo na. You know, one day I told her I don't have change, and she said, buy Paytm karo na. I said, kisko karo Paytm? She says, mujhko karo Paytm. So, that is the economic social impact. Now, if we are talking about the position of women, I have to tell you this. Let's not pass the buck. Women need to stand up for their rights. Women need to educate themselves, and women need to make a place. You know, the Hindu concept is Ardhanarishwar. The male and the female are not in competition. We are a part of a whole. So let us not be in competition to men. Seek your position in family, friends, clubs, working space. The problem is, we women, for want of being labeled bossy, let me tell you, I'm labeled very bossy. But I'm not scared of that tag. I think it's a very, to me it's a compliment. Why do we need to undermine our qualities? Stand up for your rights. And with education, education is not about degrees. Margaret Mead said, she's a very famous social scientist the world over. She said, because I wanted to educate my daughter, I did not send her to school. Forgive me, Father, I'm sitting in an educational institute. What she meant was that schools and you talked about companies, you said the corporate world pigeonholing individuals. That's not true. Partly it may be, but what is also true is that institutions nowadays, you know, they need to keep pace with time. We are still doing the rote learning. We are still making children study and do things which 5 years from now will have no relevance. So we need to move on, and women need to move on to have a good position and reclaim your position. Ancient India, we never had any problems with position of women. It is only Lord Macula's education system of finding peons and low-grade teachers that gave us this problem. And when the Britishers changed, I'm a student of history from Canodia, and when they changed the law of inheritance, that is when all the problem began. So, come on, brace yourself up.
It was Charles Darwin who said, it is not the most intelligent that will survive, but those who are willing to change. I am very happy that Sadhana has rightly pointed out the need for openness to change. In that way, definitely you are a very good optimist, madam. Now, whether you go to a temple or a mosque or a church, Corona has made us go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So here we have Dr. Pankaj Anand. If madam can claim to be a proud alumna of Canodia, Dr. Pankaj claims to be a proud alumnus of St. Xavier's CSK. And he has got his son sitting there. He is also budding doctor. He is also an alumnus of St. Xavier's. Now, I invite Dr. Pankaj Anand to talk on the impact of COVID in the health industry. I have to alert you that the health industry has been literally at the receiving end. You have received a lot of doctors, a lot of patients, and a lot of income too. This is the thing. And then in the process, only some people could afford to go for such costly medication. A big chunk of people could not even pay for their vaccination. Now, this is the present scenario. Now, tell us how the future will be in the post-COVID scenario.
Thank you, Father. Let me thank my alma mater, Xavier's, and when Dr. Mahua called me that she wanted me to come here and talk, I was waiting for it, right? COVID has been something that is unprecedented, has been unprecedented. I don't think there is any human being who's not been directly or indirectly affected by it. It has changed us personally, it has changed our relationships, it has changed our families, it's changed our society and a nation. Now let me just take you back. I'll just take 2 minutes before I talk about the future. I was actually spearheading the entire effort, anti-COVID effort at Fortis. And this was somewhere in January 2020, and actually cases started coming to us in somewhere around March, April, which was the first wave. And I still remember that the first or second time when I donned that PPE, so it felt like I was being actually put in a coffin, right? So, first wave was largely driven by fear. So anyone, if I was wearing that dress, nobody actually came close to me. And we all felt that, entering that zone, I was probably whether I'll come back or not. And we, as doctors also, we have our families, you come back home. Somehow the first wave, Corona, the word where it comes from? It's a crown. And I find it very strange that it's been named that way. Second wave. Now, what happened was we saw all colors of human nature in this COVID pandemic. I personally saw. So you saw fear, morbid fear. So I came across families. That was the tragic part, who would deposit their parent or somebody, and they would not even come to visit. And we really found it very. And then we also saw the positive side that I'll talk later about. Then came this, when the first wave started ebbing, people suddenly became overconfident. So the masks were gone, as they are happening now. People forgot about social distancing. So when I used to, warn my friends, especially the non-medical friends on WhatsApp, and they just didn't want me to talk about it. It's human nature that we don't want to think about past, especially the tragedies. Now the second wave started coming in, and the first wave, usually there were the people who were affected were the relatively elder people with comorbidities who had other diseases. So it was largely predictable, we knew. But the real tragedy, and trust me, I've never seen that. Now 20 years of my career, I've never seen such a tragic situation, all of us, where we were so helpless. When we read physiology in medicine, there are certain principles of physiology that a body follows. So if your oxygen levels go down, your heart tends to pump faster so that the oxygen is supplied, whatever available oxygen is, to the tissues. So you find this man who's talking, sitting, comfortably at home, just complaining of weakness, and you see the oxygen saturation, it is at 80. Frankly, the first time we didn't know what was happening. We did our CT scans, we did all the investigations, and because I have been dealing with very serious patients over a long period of time, there were certain principles that if somebody has an oxygen saturation of 70, you put the patient on ventilator, you give this amount of oxygen with this pressure, and the patient responds. These people were just not responding. And this was not just happening in India, of course, this struck much earlier in the Western world. And we didn't know what is happening because this is not following any principle. We were seeing viral pneumonias since I have been seeing them since 2006, 2009. I handled the swine flu wave, but they all had a predictable behavior. The basic physiology of COVID was very different from what we had learned. So initially, I would say the first 1 to 1.5 months of the pandemic made us learn what we were dealing with, and unfortunately, we lost many lives till we learned that. So we realized that it is the clotting mechanism that gets affected. I'm not going into all those details. When the second wave came, remember one thing, and this is going to have a big impact on how we plan our healthcare in future. COVID did kill people, but what killed more was the non-preparedness of our healthcare systems. And that is not just happening in this country. We are a resource-deficient country. But even in the rich nations, you look at France, Germany, United States, we were just not prepared for the scale of this thing. So everyone thought, yaar, kuch nahi hota, we are wearing masks. I heard very educated people telling me this is all a hoax, the industry and doctors have whatever, I'm not getting into that. But what happened was, my hospital had a bed capacity for COVID initially of 20 beds. We started receiving 100 people, 150 people coming there begging for beds. We know all that. The oxygen went down. What actually happened was that we were just not prepared. India spends hardly 2 to 3% of its entire budget on healthcare because healthcare is always a personal problem. There are certain government hospitals, but we know what the resource allocation is, what is the status, and not everyone can afford the luxury of private hospitals. And what will you do even in the private hospitals? Jaipur has maximum, I would say, 3,000-4,000 good quality critical care beds. So if you receive 50,000, 40,000 people literally begging for oxygen, and trust me friends, I have seen colossal tragedies. I probably someday when I retire, I'll write a book about it. People dying waiting in the waiting area. I've seen, I'll not get into that. I'll talk about the positive stories. So, then the third wave came, and fortunately, I can say that today I discharged my last patients of COVID's third wave. And I hope and I pray that I don't have to admit anymore. Now, what are the learnings and how those learnings might help us change for the future? One thing that you all must have seen, if you any day you go out, you find a lot of young men and women and ladies and boys cycling. Have you seen that? A lot of yoga classes are coming up. People are running now. What they used to, when I went to Europe, I used to see people running, besides the Thames. I'm seeing them running on roads. There is a huge epidemic or pandemic of healthcare awareness that has come to us. And whatever means people have, you don't have to, I stay close by to Central Park. I used to walk and I used to see people. Now that number has actually went 10 times. With my son, I went for a hike. I realized there was an entire line, young people, 4 o'clock in the morning hiking. That was a much needed thing we always needed. But fortunately or otherwise, COVID has actually done that. And I hope and pray, I think that is going to stay. We all want to stay healthy now. Another thing that, as already has been discussed here, is online. Now, online was very strange for me, and I must have done almost more than 1,000 online consultations. Anyone, an 80-year-old octogenarian at home is, not able to come to hospital, and how do they visit a doctor? As ma'am said, somebody from Alaska can actually consult me. Of course, you can never replace an off-site or face-to-face interaction with the patient, but definitely it has made life much easier, especially when we are handling patients who are follow-up. So if I am seeing a patient who I have seen thrice earlier, and then that patient is supposing in some village, and that person actually calls me, does a video call, it makes, just imagine the amount of effort, the amount of time, the amount of money that saves. I think online consultations, online delivery of healthcare in certain sectors is definitely going to stay. What has also changed is the way people have started looking at us. Trust me, we've always complained as doctors that people are not always just to us. We've always complained that we receive a lot of litigations, people get violent. There are emotional outbursts, but I have never received more respect in my life as a medical practitioner. And it's very easy bashing doctors, bashing not just the doctors, even the healthcare workers, the nurses, the GDAs, the what is wrongly said is the ward boys. But when you are in a COVID ICU and you're wearing that PPE, you call it, trust me, it really is very bad in the summers of July or June. And then you have this 90-year-old Ammaji you take out her from the ventilator and she has that toothless smile and she says, Beta Ashirwad. It's worth the effort. And that is why I find myself blessed to be a healthcare worker. Now, as I said, one word about, ma'am talked about female. So if I have to write some stories on the COVID pandemic, one astute figure that will always be in my memory is how women, young girls took the charge. I remember one girl, she was hardly 17, 18-year-old girl, and there were no beds available in Delhi. So she got her father admitted with us at Fortis. Fortunately, they got a bed, and he was a schizophrenic, mentally deranged. And that girl used to, whenever I went for rounds, daily I used to go, and I always found her standing beside her father in that PPE. And I told, Beta, why do you have to come? We are taking care. Nahi. So I saw so many young girls and women who were, I am not blaming my sex here, even the boys worked very hard. But we, especially in our state, which is relatively, if you might use the word, backward in terms of gender, I saw a resilient new face, which I had never seen in my 16 years of life. She was there, she was the decision maker, she was the one who was getting medicine, she was the one who was asking me questions. Sir, mere father, meri mother, abhi tak theek kyun nahi hui? So that was something actually I noticed. And ma'am, frankly, women, can never ever be equal to or compete with men. They are far above. And I'm not saying here because the majority here are ladies.
Your son will take it to home.
The resilience, she'll cry, but she'll stand there. I might not cry, but I might break earlier. But this is what I saw. Now, what is the future? Specifically talking about COVID. Now, this is at best. Two things I've learned about COVID is, please respect it. This virus, whoever has tried to challenge it, whoever has tried to take it casually, it has punished them as a country, as a community, as an individual. So I've had some of my friends who are, laughing it away, and the next day they were in the ICU and we struggled to save them. So don't ever take this virus casually. I still, when visited, they said Omicron was mild. I still was wearing the entire thing. Some of my friends were not doing so, but I learned it the harder way. You have to be very clear that COVID is never going to go away from the face of earth. It will be there, it will keep coming, but it will become what we use the term as an endemic. Endemic means it becomes limited in pockets. You might have waves coming, but the waves might be. Does anyone of you remember anything about swine flu? So I had a time when people were morbidly afraid of swine flu. They left their families and ran away. Ki main mar jaunga swine flu se. Nobody talks about it, right? So I think that is going to be the situation with COVID, but probably not, because another thing would be coming. Second thing, these pandemics will be there. The virus is much, much more smarter than us in what we discussed in adapting. So what Darwin said, whoever adapts wins the race. So we will have to learn to adapt ourselves. We'll have to learn to keep, at least for the near future, wearing the masks, maintaining social distance. I know it sounds cliche, hum sab bore ho chuke hain, nobody wants to listen about it, nobody wants to practice it. But remember, you and I are healthy people. You and I are on the younger side. But remember, most of us are carriers. So we take this virus, we take this disease at home. I have seen people dying and they said, sir, mujhe jukam tha, I went home, I gave it to my father and the father went. So it is our responsibility to ensure that we don't carry all this. To end on a positive note, we have to remember that Father started with saying that human spirit, and these are the words, human spirit has been undermined, probably, I don't remember the words, but human resilience and spirit will never go. Before coming to this gathering, I just saw one patient of mine. She was a 66-year-old Gaonwali lady. Gaonwali is not a wrong word, but an uneducated lady. Was with me at Fortis Hospital for 7 months with a COVID score of 23 out of 24. We did everything on her. She was on ventilator, prone, and when I sent her home around 3 months back, I was very scared that probably I'll never see her again. She's been coming every month. Today afternoon, she didn't carry that oxygen. She walked into me, trust me, if this virus can kill you suddenly, cause serious injury suddenly, but the human physiology, human nature has the power of going back to normal. Nobody can wipe us off this planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pangajanat. You spoke from your heart. I thought doctors touch the hearts only in the operation theatre, but in such a big auditorium, you touch the hearts of everyone. I take this opportunity to thank the entire medical fraternity for the wonderful commitment you have shown during the COVID period. The lack of sleep, the lack of contacts with your own family members, and the total availability. I know some of our alumni doctors have spent the whole months in the hospital without visiting home. It is because of such committed doctors, I am convinced that the earth is revolving. So please continue the good work. Hats off to all the works, the things you have done in the past. And we teachers always boast that teaching is a noble profession. I think medical profession also is a noble profession. For that matter, if you look at every profession, if done with the greatest sincerity, every profession has to be a noble profession. Now, to ask you a question, you have beautifully presented the entire scenario, and I am also convinced that this COVID-19 is not the last pandemic. We do not know what is going to evolve. Please tell us, with your expertise, is India ready for the next pandemic?
So I think the most difficult question to ask. It totally depends on what the pandemic is going to throw at us. As compared to the first wave, definitely we are much better prepared. We have better resources. We now know the virus much better. We now know how to manage the virus much better. We also are epidemiologically much better equipped. Yet we need a lot more to develop. We need much higher allocation of funds for healthcare. We need bigger, better hospitals available not just to the haves, but the poor people also have a right to access to good healthcare. So that is something which we need a vision for. We need the administrators or the politicians to use this opportunity. A tragedy is also an opportunity. So we have to learn what matters to us, to you and me and all of us, is a good healthcare, a good education, rather than what we run after. So I hope and I pray it will not be a bigger tragedy.
Thank you for the very depth level sharing. Now you have listened to three people from three different perspectives. Now the floor is open. Any questions, please? Just pass on the mic. Anybody can ask any question. Address to anybody.
Anyone in the audience can just come here. Okay.
Yes, please. Dr. Denny Shaji.
Ma'am, could you just come over here and place your question?
Or I can forward.
Good afternoon to all. I'm Dr. Denny Shaji. My question is to Sadhna ma'am. First of all, it was very impressive, ma'am, your presentation. Yeah, the question that is coming up, it's not actually a question, a thought that is coming to my mind. It's like when women get educated, you know,
Louder, please.
louder. When women get educated, what comes along with education with the years is like get a job, you know, earn. So, you know, the women empowerment, that particular word that we use. When we see the village women who are not educated and they are at home, they're not earning, suddenly I feel like, are we trusting our women empowerment image to those women in the villages who are otherwise happy, and then we are telling them you come out, you know, start earning, you know, something like. So the confusing point comes, they are happy, they are in their life, looking after their children, and even if they don't earn, they feel very powerful. And suddenly we are telling them no, you know. I hope I'm able to convey. So this put me into a confusing state. If they are happy and their idea of women empowerment is different, who are we to decide that, see, this is the idea of empowerment?
I think it's a very relevant question, especially in these times when we face a dichotomy of running a home, supporting a social system, which in itself is going through a lot of change. And on the other hand, we have work commitments. But I have to tell you this, and I totally believe this. You know, I went to a school which was MGD, and we had a British principal father, Miss Luther, and she would always make, you know, we had princesses and the world's who's who coming to MGD in the hostel then. And one thing that we all carried, she made us polish our shoes, she made us learn how to cook and make your own beds. There is a philosopher who has said, if you want to change the world, go make your bed first. What you said is very relevant. You know, the rural women are empowered. To me, if you have an unhappy family, children who are not cared for, a disgruntled husband, ignored elders in the family. I may sound like a woman from the dark ages. That's another thing which people say, that Sadhna, you belong to the dark ages. But if you have all this and a successful career, you are not an empowered woman. Indira Nooyi, as president of PepsiCo, said, when I get back home, I still have to go out and bring my milk. So you can't delegate your responsibility I'm not talking about gender nominated duties. I'm talking about as a social human being. You know, between a man and a woman as husband and wife, you need to be in togetherness, in companionship, in sharing your responsibilities. And to say that the rural women are not empowered is wrong. They go to the fields, they look after the children, they are not educated, most of them. They are empowered. They know exactly what they want. They are not confused like us. They dress as they want. They don't ape the Bollywood. They don't want to walk the ramp. They are happy in this system. And we should be proud of our rural women. I'm telling you, the Indian woman, which Dr. Anand just said, that is true. I'm amazed as a journalist to see the resilience of women. And yes, women are tougher. You know, we are only weaker in the physical sense of the term, but we are tougher. Our EQ is always better. I hope I've answered your question.
One of the shades of the same question is, should the rural women come to town for progress, development?
No, I think the town should go to the rural women. We have created urban ghettos. We don't need to do that. The Indian economy today is aping the West, but once when it was a self-sufficient economy, it was a self-contained economy, of course we need to make changes according to the globalization of the markets. But the rural women, she goes online, she wants to know what the Mandi Bhav in Delhi is, and she does all that. So let the town go to the women and teach them and educate them.
The father of the nation has rightly pointed out that India lives in the heart of India lives in the rural places, but governments after governments have developed towns, exploiting the villages. Next question, please. Yes, please pass on the mic.
Father, I have a question for all three of them. So, can I?
Please.
A question? Not a question, for three questions for three of them. So, I can?
Go ahead.
Alright, sir. My first question is to you, ma'am Rashmi. Ma'am, you said that the pandemic came as a sudden shock to the education sector. Ma'am, my question is that how do you think it is a sudden shock? If you want me to put up the facts, I just put up the facts because when it was on 29 January, on 29 January, WHO reported, China reported to its regional WHO center that there is some strange kind of pneumonia that has been found. On 1st of January, there was this incident management support team which was formed by WHO. On 5th of January, there was something called Indian Health Regulations, which is a protocol of 2005 to which India is a signatory, and they called it a meeting, and by 30th January it was declared a public health emergency. By 11th March it was declared a pandemic, and by May 23rd of the same year 2020, our health minister, and I quote him, he said, "Don't be scared of COVID-19, it is not virulent in India." So ma'am, it's not just about, because education sector is different from the medical sector. I believe that if you're responsible for any group of people, be it the students, be it the teachers themselves, or even if you are the chief medical officer of the district or the health minister, you have to be, how is it a sudden shock for you?
So what is your question?
She should elaborate it, how is it a sudden shock? Because for me, it took a long time. It took a long time for us. Sir, shock hota to lockdown बिना cases के बड़े कैसे लग गया? Should I move on to my questions?
I think, can I, on her?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I didn't get your name. Kushagra. That's a very relevant question, but I'm actually speaking before her. You have to understand that this virus, first of all, what this virus was, what was causing people to fall sick, what were the presentations, how to diagnose it, and how to manage these cases actually was not known to mankind before that. We've had one pandemic 100 years back, but those learnings were gone, right? So the word, that shock word that she's saying is, when they started, none of us envisaged how it is going to affect you and me, how it is going to affect our families, the society, the education system. So it came as a total surprise to us. If you might use the word, doesn't make a difference whether you call it a shock or surprise. But the entire world, not just the education system, the finances, the healthcare, everything was caught by a surprise. The sheer number, as you rightly said, even the health minister didn't know. Poor health minister, he can't imagine, even I could not have imagined the sheer magnitude of the problem. Ma'am, would you?
this has been answered very well by Dr. Anand. But as far as educational institutions are concerned, I would say there, as I have said earlier also, there was a challenge already existing before the institutions. And I said this came as a shock because when the first lockdown came, we did not realize that it is going to prolong, and we were not equipped and ready to make this paradigm shift. The shift in imparting education that we have been used to, and after the first lockdown, we were all hopeful that things would be under control, and there is the health machinery, there is the government, and there are various volunteers who are working. So in a month or 2 months, this is going to be okay. But when it did not happen and it continued for 2 years, and then because as you also know, I don't know, the present generation is well versed in digital methods. The teachers were not so much equipped, and they had to, as Sadhna has said, that they had to upskill and reskill themselves. You have to first unlearn and then learn new methods. So when it really came suddenly, if we were preparing for this 1 year in advance, things would have been very easy for us. But this did not happen. Suddenly, one fine morning, you were told the colleges will reopen, but the students will not come. But you have to take your classes. So this is the sudden shift in the paradigm of unlearning what you have learned as a teacher and then learning new methods. It really took time to cope up with that stress.
Thank you. We are running short of time. One more question.
I had questions to all three of them, so I'm left with two.
We are running short of time, so make it short. Questions should not be longer than the answer.
All right, Father. Miss Sadhna, ma'am, you spoke very well. I was pretty impressed. Ma'am,
we are running short of time. Directly the question.
That women need to run on their places. Ma'am, my question to you is that have the women, and particularly in India, my country, women they recognize themselves as women. When a woman appreciates a movie like Kabir Singh and its character Kabir Singh as being protective and possessive, that appreciation goes on to the mainstream of when even men are there. So have the women done that? Or you take, for example, what was happening in Udupi in Karnataka. A girl shouting for her religion in front of a band of boys.
See, avoid example, ask the question directly.
So I have asked the question in my first statement. So have the women recognized themselves as women to be able to run on their places? And if they have not, ma'am, how will you justify it when girls of today are actually swearing in the name of mothers and daughters?
Okay.
You know, in English language,
Yes.
when I say women need to run faster while standing at their place, means, this is a euphemism in English language, means women need to upskill, women need to reskill, women need to reinvent, re-energize, recreate, rebuild, and reuse everything. The limited resources, pandemic-19 also taught you that how to survive in limited resources. Pandemic-19 also taught you that it is unfair of you to always look at women to shoulder all the burdens. Come on, brace yourself up. It is unfair for citizens to always look at the government to do everything and not be responsible citizens. So women need to just be on the job 24/7 is what I meant.
you.
Is that all right?
All right, ma'am, but you didn't comment on the latter part of the question.
What is the other part?
Women need to recognize themselves as women. Have they recognized themselves as women?
Of
Have
course.
they recognized that they have a separate voice? Then being a tale of some institution, some group, some culture?
No. Okay, let's take a poll here. Put up your hands, all those who think that you have a voice. See? All women have a voice. I have a voice, that's why I'm sitting here. Dr. Chaturvedi has a voice, that's why she's sitting here.
I have increased your volume.
Father, my final
we
question.
will have, please sit down. Some other question, I'll come back to you. Yes, Madam, Dr. Neelu. Kushar, you can ask still your question at the end.
Yeah, Valedictory on the days, and my dear friends, good afternoon one and all. My question is to Dr. Pankaj Anand, but before that, Ms. Sabna, you are my Jija. I have also passed from MGD and I was a part of the academic session when LG Luter was there. So I am privileged today to have you on the days. Dr. Anand, my question is, as a doctor, how do you visualize after 25 years? Because I am a teacher of botany and I deal in plant sciences. On one hand, we speak about single cell protein. Say the algae, spirulina and chlorella. They will be considered as single cell proteins in coming generations. Whereas we are also working on somatic hybridization. Then we are also speaking about the traditional wealth, including medicinal plants. And Ayurveda also had some importance during Corona. So how do you visualize and how do you compare allopathy and Ayurveda, both the sciences?
That's a very dangerous question, asking from an allopath. I don't think there is any conflict of interest between Ayurveda or allopathy. It's just that certain vested interest mix up the two. Ayurveda is, I would say, an equally important, equally old science. Unfortunately, the problem with us Indians is we've not been able to do research and publish it. Even I might have seen much more patients of COVID as compared to some Western part. He sees 100 patients, he has a research department, he takes the data, publishes a paper, while I am still busy, working with the patients. That is what has happened with Ayurveda. So to, just putting it that Ayurveda to SIA, and I think that is not being fair. At the same time, the problem has happened because we've not given enough respect, resources and money to the practitioners of Ayurveda. They tend to move towards practicing allopathy without having enough knowledge of the clinical practice of allopathy while they are graduates in Ayurveda. But that's a big debate. It's not. I think I'll just increase the horizon of what, I'll use your question as an excuse. What I envisage 25 years from now, when our country got independence, our average life span was somewhere 56, 57, 36. Today what it is, 68, right? If I'm not wrong, if my figure is not, somewhere around. 75 years, this has changed. Now what is happening is the change, as you know, is everywhere, and the speed of change has changed. So in healthcare, the research has actually, especially after COVID, has leapfrogged. And next 25 years, and all of you, my friends, try to live for as long as you can. Why? Because probably 25 years or 30 years from now, you'll get treatments where you might get another extension of 10 years with medicines. Seriously speaking, a lot of new technologies have come and are in the pipeline, which will actually help us solve a lot of healthcare problems. 15-20 years back, HIV was a big dread. Now we have medicines which actually give you a lifespan which is almost equal to a normal lifespan if you treat them properly. Right? This is polio is gone. How many of, when we were kids, we had a lot of people were limping and died because of poliomyelitis. So, 25 years from now, definitely things are going to be better. 25 years from now, the entire research, including Ayurveda, because that is where it is going to come from, nature, right? We'll have more technologies, we'll have more medications, which will give us longer, more useful and independent lives, provided we don't fall prey to things that we've already fallen. Do you know, over the last 15 years, my mother died of cancer 15 years back. There was just one hospital which was treating cancer. Today, every hospital has an oncologist on board. 300 times cancer has increased in this country. Do you know that? I was discussing with my oncologist yesterday. He said by 2035, every house will have at least one cancer patient. And the amount of resource crunch it gives to a family, getting chemos and all. Same with diabetes. Look, almost all of us have one family member or known person who has diabetes. So it is important, and thanks to COVID, as I pointed out, that we think about our health, we learn to stay fitter, and we try to get away from this processed thing that has come. It's a huge industry, processed foods. Do you remember, I don't know, in my childhood, we didn't have these plastic bottles. The milk used to come in those glass bottles. Ab sab saras ki thali we use, right? This entire RO system is all plastics. I was just wondering where this cancer is coming from. The pesticides, you are a botanist, the pesticides. Please, you people are going to come up with, pesticide-free foods. So that is where we have to think, and we have to stay alive and fit for next 25 years to probably have another 20 years with us.
Okay. We are terribly running behind the schedule. Maybe Kusar, you can ask the question privately when we meet outside. I want to thank on behalf of the college management, staff and students, the very inspiring, very insightful and informative sharing by Ms. Sadhana Garg and Dr. Pankaj Anand and Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi. And also I thank the audience for the very patient, very captivated ways of listening to the inputs. And I am sure the fruit of the cake is in the eating, they say. Unless and until we have a commitment to improve the society in our own ways, all such international conferences will be a waste of time. As a takeaway of such a wonderful program, each individual, each Indian, each boy, girl, man, woman should take a pledge that I will work for the betterment of a great country. With this, I thank the participants. Over to the organizers for the valedictory function. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thank you to all the panelists. After having such a phenomenal panel discussion with a galaxy of knowledge-enriching luminary as our panelists, I hope we are somewhere better prepared for the toughest times, even if they knock our doors.
Thankfulness is the beginning of gratitude. Gratitude is the completion of thankfulness. With words that express such reverence, I'd like to request Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo, S.J., our principal, to extend the token of gratitude to the esteemed panelists. I request the Reverend Fathers to please extend the token of gratitude to the esteemed panelists, Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Dr. Pankaj Anand, Dr. Pankaj Anand, Ms. Sadhana Garg,
With this, I, Madhukar Nair, along with the co-host Vanchika Chicago, sign off for the day and hand over the session to Ananya and Namita.
Thank you, Ananya and Madhukar. I kindly request all our esteemed panelists to join us for the valedictory ceremony. Thank you.
Warm afternoon greetings to one and all present. I, Ananya Vishwas, along with Namira Anjan, welcome you all to the valedictory ceremony of the two-day ICSSR-sponsored Multidisciplinary International Conference in collaboration with CSI and TST. We are honored to have Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi as our chief guest, and we are grateful for the presence of our esteemed panelists, Ms. Sadhana Garg and Dr. Pankaj Anand. We are also graced by the presence of Reverend Father Dr. Arogya Swami S.J., Rector and Manager, Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo S.J., Principal, and Reverend Father Dr. Raymond Kerrigan S.J., Vice Principal and Administrator, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. The 2 days of our Multidisciplinary International Conference on Emerging New World Order in the Post-Pandemic Scenario have explored different facets of the new emerging world order. The conference encouraged scholars to discover new ideas and explore solutions to the adversities caused in different fields. Let us mark the onset of the ceremony by striking the right chord. I request the technical team to kindly play the prayer song.
Oh
Thank you. That was indeed a heartwarming start.
The new normal has taken the shape of a reality, which means coexisting with the virus. From online education, work, even virtual court hearings for that matter, the world has indeed undergone a drastic change. The conference focused on highlighting those changes in a total of 8 technical sessions that entailed the best of the intellectual minds and their vigor for research. These 2 days have been a cauldron of academic exploration. Let us have a glimpse of this intellectual concourse. I request the technical team to kindly share those moments with us. Thank you for that wonderful rendition to the international conference.
All the sessions of the 2-day multidisciplinary international conference were brimming with intellect and innovative ideas. Now it is time that we listen to the intricacies of the 2-day multidisciplinary international conference. I request the Chief Rapporteur of the conference, Dr. Ranjit Kaur, to present the report of the 2-day proceeding.
The pursuit of knowledge is a quality exclusive to humans, where curiosity and inquisitiveness have been the driving forces of progress for centuries. Research, therefore, is a much more defined quest for knowledge that has given a definite direction. The Multidisciplinary International Conference, sponsored by ICSSR, DST, and CSI on 18th and 19th February 2022 at St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, is an academically directed effort towards research into specific themes across the various domains of knowledge. This year's theme, Emerging New World Order in the Post-Pandemic Scenario, had been conceived to explore different views, insights, discoveries, innovations related to the post-pandemic global situation from scholars, researchers, and professionals. The aim was to provide a unique platform to raise awareness about upcoming innovation in multidisciplinary approach to learning. A hearty good afternoon to Honorable Reverend Father Alok Kiswami, SJ Director and Manager, Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo, Principal, Reverend Father Dr. Raymond Carabin, Vice Principal and Administrator, and our respected guest for the day, Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Director, Kanuria PG Mahila Mahavidyalaya, as our Chief Guest for the Valedictory function, Ms. Sadhna Garg, Social Entrepreneur, Chairperson of Raghupur Trust, Dr. Pankaj Anand, Senior Consultant, Fortis, my colleagues and students. I, Dr. Ranjit Kaur, the Organizing Secretary, feel honored to have this opportunity to present before you a brief report of International Conference. For the past 2 days, the deliberations of this International Conference have given us food for thought, to ponder over, ruminate, and question for existing viewpoints in fields as diverse as management, commerce, economics, science and psychology, to the technical area of IT, meandering through the all-pervasive field of literature and political science. The first day began with a very enriching inaugural ceremony, which was graced by the benign presence of Reverend Fathers, the chief guest, Dr. Vipin Chandra Sharma, IAS former Additional Chief Secretary, former Principal Secretary, Government of Rajasthan, guest of honor, Professor Priyanka Upadhyay, chairholder, UNESCO Chair for Peace and Intercultural Understanding, and keynote speaker, Professor D.P. Sharma, Indian PM's National Ambassador under UNDP, Digital Diplomat and International Consultant, ILO United Nations, wherein Professor Sharma discussed in his address about digital divide and devoid in the times of COVID-19, along with the increasing reliance on the internet that also causes environmental damage. The inaugural ceremony was followed by a plenary session, which was graced by eminent panelists like Professor J.P. Sharma, former Vice Chancellor, MLSU University, Udaipur, Dr. Rashmi Jain, Head and Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Rajasthan, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Sharma, Professor, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, USA, Dr. Navneet Sharma, Secretary, Computer Society of India, Jaipur Chapter, and Associate Professor, IIS University, Jaipur. And Dr. B.L. Saini, Director, Rajasthan, Hindi Granth Academy, Government, Rajasthan. Saini sir was not able to attend the conference due to some medical emergency. It has been rightly said, life is a series of good beginnings and not endings. Thus began a series of parallel technical sessions organized virtually in different disciplines. The first session, Resilience and Transformation of Business in the Post-Pandemic Era, chaired by Professor Trilok Kumar Jain, Professor and Dean, International School of Business Management, Suresh Gyanvihar University, Rajasthan. The keynote address was delivered by Professor Hemendra Kumar Dangi, Department of Commerce, Delhi University, on the new emerging term, New World Order, its impact on the business and its impact on business-related research. A total of 42 papers were presented in this session on various aspects of business, from entrepreneurship, marketing, finance, banking, human resource management, business analytics and opportunities for the food delivery market of India, ground-level analysis of digital payments during COVID outburst, emotional intelligence, stress at workplace, need of microfinancing in MSMEs, blue ocean strategies, and its application in retail sector enterprises. Technical session 2 was on the theme of computing technology, paradigm shift and emerging global responsibility, chaired by Dr. Bright K. Swani, Professor, Department of Computer Science, Suresh Gyanvihar University, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Sharma, Professor, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, Maryland, USA, and Dr. Ahmed, Professor, Department of Computer Science and Mathematics, University of Kufa, Nazaf, Iraq. The topics they covered include the importance of technology, the role and importance of digitalization, big data and analysis, techniques in pandemic control management operations, and the implementation of artificial intelligence in today's era. More than 35 researchers from different locations presented their views on the innovation and implementations of different computing technologies and techniques utilized to serve mankind in this pandemic situation. Technical session 3 explored navigating the new normal in the finance sector through the paradigm shift. The session was chaired by Dr. Manoj Kumar Mishra, Professor, College of Business and Economics, University of Ethiopia, and the keynote address was delivered by Professor Dr. Raj Kumar Singh, Dean, HOD, Department of Commerce, Chairperson, Center for Entrepreneurship Innovation and Skill Development, School of Management Sciences, Varanasi, who insisted upon the importance of filing patents by the academicians and researchers and scholars. The papers covered a spectrum of concerns and issues like globalization, economic exclusion to economic inclusion, rediscovering marketing and insurance sectors, sustainable and digital entrepreneurship, green innovation and entrepreneurship, transformation in the banking sector, robotics, accounting, investment and derivative market behavior in the post-pandemic. A total of 29 research papers were presented by academicians and research scholars around the globe who shared best practices and unique initiatives being practiced in the country and institutions that others can adopt and absorb. Technical session 4, which was on the theme Emerging Socio-Political Dimensions and Dynamics, was chaired by Dr. Sadhna Bhandari, Associate Professor, Department of Public Administration, Government Dugar College, Bikaner, who highlighted the various socio-political concerns that have emerged out of the COVID-19 pandemic and discussed the challenges faced by the governments in the dealing with the crisis. The keynote address of the session was delivered by Professor Frank Wills, Faculty of Social Sciences and Political Sciences, University of Innsbruck, Austria, and Dr. Naomi Chand, Associate Professor in Public Administration, PG Government College for Girls, Punjab University, Chandigarh, who have discussed the various environmental concerns and the issues of governance that has escalated globally as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. The key remarks by the eminent keynote speakers were followed by 38 paper presentations and discussions on various issues such as the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on migration, society, education, public health, environment, mental health, livelihood, human rights, and the issues of global governance and the emerging new world order. Technical session 5 was divided into 2 parts. On the first day, the chairperson of the session was Professor Joy Chakrabarti, former Dean, Faculty of Arts, and Head of the Department, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. The keynote address was delivered by Professor Deepa Chakrabarti, Head MIT School of Languages, MIT University, Rajasthan. The scholars presented their research on areas including trauma and healing, online teaching, use of cinema and videos while teaching online, the cathartic use of literature, emerging pedagogies, crime fiction, and OTT platform. For the second day, the chairperson of the session was Professor Joseph Edurairaj, Professor of English, School of English and Foreign Languages, Gandhigram Rural Institute, deemed to be University Gandhigram. The keynote was delivered by Dr. Neerja Saraswat, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur. The scholars presented their research on areas including transformation of digital literature, learning, language through social media, effects of pandemic on teaching pedagogies, e-readers, flipped classroom, and language teaching in the post-pandemic world. There were 36 papers presented in the session, which were followed by the remarks of the chairperson and an enlightening discussion on the concerns raised by the scholars. The COVID-19 pandemic is a global crisis that has hit the world on multiple fronts. As a result, India's economy has taken a massive hit. However, every challenge presents a new opportunity, as is seen in the way how Indian economy is on the path of recovery. Technical session 6, which was economic emergence, the post-pandemic era, focused on various sub-themes such as restructuring of Indian economy, global poverty, inequality, hunger and unemployment, economic concerns in post-pandemic era. The session was chaired by Dr. Manju Singh, Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, MNIT. The session's keynote address was delivered by Dr. Deepa Sinha, Assistant Professor, School of Liberal Studies, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, wherein she underlined the progress made in the Indian economy post-pandemic and legacy sectors where the economy needs urgent attention. The major themes of the paper were focused on skill development mission in the new era, health, education and human development in the post-pandemic era. A total of 19 papers were presented. Technical session 7 explored the theme of new trends in science and technology and innovation, expounding in post-pandemic scenario where around 21 scientists and research scholars had put their findings and innovations about new trends in science and technology. The session was chaired by Dr. Somna Datta, Professor, Department of Botany, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, and the keynote address was delivered by Dr. Kulwant Raj, cardiologist, Ministry of Health, Saudi Arabia, and Dr. Shailaja Juneja, Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Science, IIS University, Jaipur. Various themes that were explored include robotics and drone development in the healthcare sector, artificial intelligence for prediction and data analytics, rapid mutations in viruses, biochemistry for sanitization and disinfection, and other related topics. The last session, that is technical session of 8, was emanation of psychological research in a post-pandemic era, where varied themes including COVID-19 and children's mental health, depression and anxiety levels during the post-pandemic era, emerging importance of mental health in the workplace at post-pandemic times, burnout of mental health professionals and emergence of support systems, and strategies to improve mental health. The session had a total of 21 presentations and was chaired by Dr. Chandrani Sen, Associate Professor, Department of Psychology, University of Rajasthan, and the keynote address was delivered by Dr. Bhavna Arya, Associate Professor, Department of Psychology, School of Humanities, Social Sciences, Manipal University. The main highlight of day 2 of the international conference is its enlightening panel discussion on the main theme that was chaired by Reverend Father Aylex Angelo, Principal St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, with experts as panelists from varied disciplines. The eminent panelists were Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Director Kanoria PG Mahila Mahavidyalaya, Dr. Pankaj Anand, Senior Consultant Fortis, Dr. Ms. Sadhana Garg, Social Entrepreneur, Chairperson of Raghukul Trust. Panelist Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi discussed about sudden shift in paradigm, digital divide and digital revolution, but stresses upon human mentoring. Sadhana Ma'am said that women need to run faster instead of standing at one place, and women also felt pressure to perform at all levels because they employed in the unorganized sectors. Pankaj sir has mentioned that he has witnessed all colors of human behavior, and sir has also mentioned that we were not prepared in respect to health sector. All the panelists and Father Principal stresses upon to be hopeful and mentioned that human spirit and resilience will never go. Father Principal concluded his remark, and he has mentioned that we all have to work for the betterment of this society. Besides erudition being shared, we had nearly 275 registrations and 237 research papers being presented by academicians, professors, research scholars, students from across the globe in 8 technical sessions. During the conference, 33 eminent resource persons specialized in different fields were invited to share their expertise. We believe that this effort of St. Xavier's College, Jaipur shall contribute to the area of academics and add new findings for the society at large. I'm sure new perspectives have developed out of the confluence of these 2 days of knowledge, and we feel honored to have witnessed this intellectual endeavor by the college and look forward to similar such opportunities in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Indeed, these 2 days gave all of us a new perspective. Thank you, ma'am.
Today we have with us a beacon of intellect, Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Director, Kanodia PG Mahila Mahavidyalaya, Jaipur, Rajasthan. Ma'am has been a part of the Indian Association of Commonwealth, Literature and Language at Jaipur in 2003. Ma'am has a number of publications to her name and has been a part of a plethora of seminars and conferences. We're indeed honored to have her as our chief guest for the ceremony. I'm sure we have a lot to learn from ma'am, hence, without further ado, I request ma'am to kindly take the stage and share a few words from her ocean of knowledge.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity once again. I'm thankful to the management and administration of Xavier's College, participants, the organizing team, and all those who have contributed to the success of this 2 days event. As the theme is new normal or the world after COVID, I would say the world after COVID would be built upon hope, because it is not the first time that humanity is faced with such catastrophe. This has happened earlier also, but mankind has survived and thrived and flourished. So here also there are lessons to be taken from this, and depending on those lessons, we would flourish again. There are handicaps and hiccups in the new things that we try to develop, but I'm pretty hopeful that the way the world has, and especially our country, has responded to this catastrophe, we will be able to, there's nothing which can stop us from flourishing, from I would quote Emily Dickinson here. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. I have heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in the extremity it has asked a crumb for me. So have hope. We have all had hope, and there is nothing which can damage the mankind eternally. It has not been able to do earlier. It will not do so now also, especially for the institutions. They have always reinvented themselves. They have always risen to the occasion. And we have seen here in this pandemic situation where the institutions have in no time mustered enough support, mustered enough courage to adopt new ways of teaching and learning, and the students have also coped with that. So with this, I think post-pandemic is the hope. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have indeed learned valuable lessons today.
The international conference became the catalyst between researchers and a platform that displayed their potential to its fullest extent. With this, it's our honor to announce the best presentations that were a part of this enriching discourse.
Moving on with the first technical session, the best paper presenter, Dr. Rekha Khosla, Amity University. Technical session 2, Miss Madhumita S. Juvaraj, Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology. Technical session 3, Miss Divya Jain, Manav Rachna, International Institute of Research and Studies. Technical session 4, Mr. Siddharth Bhattacharya, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. Technical session 5, Miss Samina Tabassum, Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. Technical session 5B, Miss U. Muthukumari, SRM Trichy Arts and Science College, Tamil Nadu. Technical session 6, Miss Juhi Chaturvedi and Dr. Mahima Rai, IIS deemed to be University, Jaipur. Technical session 7, Dr. Sylvie Matthew, Vimla College, Autonomous, Thrissur. Technical session 8, Miss Neelam Gupta and Miss Rita Gupta, BBT Government College, Chimanpura, Jaipur. Thank you.
The intellect of the wise is like glass. It admits the light of heaven and reflects it. Now I request Reverend Father Dr. Aylex Angelo, S.J., Principal, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, to address the audience.
I was telling them we have addressed enough, so it's my sacred duty to thank the organizers. First and foremost, Dr. Dharamveer, the convener. Let us give him a big hand. Dr. Ankita Rathod, the co-convener. Dr. Ranjit and Dr. Magwa Bose, the organizing secretaries. Dr. Meeta Sharma, Dr. Neelu Sharma, Dr. Mridalini Maujudar, Ms. Sunita Chowdhury, as members of the organizing committee, and a galaxy of students involved in different activities, and all staff were involved. So my hats off to all the staff members who have worked in different committees. On behalf of Father Aaron, Father Raymond, and on my own behalf, it's my pleasure witnessing a lot of hard work, planning, and execution. With the experience of organizing this international conference, I am sure we will organize much better in the years to come. So, my sincere gratitude to all. Now, to every good thing should come to an end, I thought I'll give a good thought before we disperse. I came across in the internet with a heading, "My house was about to be locked." On 29th November 2018, just because I was not able to pay the rent, my house was about to be locked. I posted it on Facebook seeking for help, but all I got were 2 likes and 0 comments. So I sent 250 messages to my contact list requesting for a loan of just $1,500. It's an American. Sadly, only 10 people replied. 6 out of the 10 claimed they could not help. Only 1 out of the 4 who said they could help actually gave me some money, but the rest only gave me excuses and never picked my even phone calls. In the end, my door was locked. I had nowhere to sleep. I walked in the dark seeking options, and sadly, a thief stole my empty purse with my ID card in it. As he was rushing, he was badly hit by a moving fast car. So he died on the spot with my ID with him. The next day, news quickly spread around that I had died. About 2,500 people posted on my wall how they knew me, how great I was. In fact, a committee was formed by my so-called loyal friends who contributed $18,000 to feed guests at my funeral. My colleagues at work teamed up and brought another $4,500 for a coffin, tents and chairs. I was to be buried in a coffin worth $1,500, the same amount I needed for the rent for which I advertised. Relatives also met. It was a rare occasion for them to meet, so they met and contributed an extra $3,000. Everyone wanted to volunteer in order to appear as if they were helping. They printed t-shirts with my image. Each t-shirt costing about $3, so the t-shirt man made about $25,000 from my presumed death. Everyone wanted to speak at my funeral. There was a drama all over from the people whom I never met, who never knew how I survived. There was even rumor that I was murdered by my friends. Speeches were made on how talented I was, even by those who never attended my events. The new friends who supported me did not even get a chance to speak during my funeral, although they knew the truth. In fact, they were prime suspects for my so-called death. You could imagine how the scene turned after I showed up alive. Some thought I was a ghost. Author unknown. But the last line is very important. This is the irony of life. We love the dead more than the living. At the end of the day, after strenuous efforts and talking great things, unless and until I become an authentic human being with a character, competence and compassion, I will never become a worthy survivor in the post-new normal. We are going to live in the post-new normal. I wish at least that trend starts from Xavier's, having that humane heart, feeling for the other, irrespective of one's caste, color and creed. Once again, hats off to all. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you for your insights, Father. Moving forth, I would now like to invite Dr. Ankita Rathore, co-convener, to kindly present the vote of thanks.
And miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep. What the great poet Robert Frost wrote in these immortal lines has been the driving spirit of the organizing staff, administrators of St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, and our students who so selflessly and lovingly poured their hearts for organizing this multidisciplinary international conference over the past 2 days. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. Let me first start giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's occasion a resounding success. On behalf of the entire Xaverian family, I extend hearty thanks to our resource persons for the day, Dr. Rashmi Chaturvedi, Ms. Sadhna Garg, and Dr. Pankaj Anand for accepting our invitation and sparing time from their busy schedule to grace the occasion and share their intellectual erudition on the main theme of the conference. I am grateful to Reverend Father Dr. R.O.K. Swami S.J., Rector and Manager, for his words of encouragement. His able guidance has always encouraged us. I am grateful to Reverend Father Dr. A. Rex Angelo, S.J., Principal, for his unstinted support for guiding us and showing the right path. Without his guidance and able leadership, successful organization and conduction of this event would have not been possible. I would like to express my gratitude to Reverend Father Dr. Raymond Kerubin, Vice Principal and Administrator, for his constant support and motivation. I'm grateful to the Technical Committee, Media Committee, MC Committee, Refreshment Committee, Discipline Committee, Decoration Committee, Photography Committee, Logistics, and other committees for the conference for their efforts and dedicated work. I would like to thank all the staff members, office staff, and maintenance staff who work behind the scenes to make this event happen. I would like to record my heartfelt gratitude to my dedicated team members, Dr. Dharamveer Yadav, convener, organizing secretaries Dr. Mahua Bose and Dr. Ranjit Kaur, Ms. Mrinalini Faujdar, Dr. Meeta Sharma, Ms. Sunita Chaudhary, Dr. Neelu Sharma for their constant support, and without whom this conference would not have been possible. I would also like to place on record the hard work done by students, volunteers, and the overall coordinators who work selflessly for the success and smooth conduction of this event. Last but not the least, my deep sense of thanks and appreciation goes to the chief guest and guest of honor for inaugural and valedictory, resource persons for all the technical sessions, the participants who attended and presented their papers in this conference with great enthusiasm and made this event a great success. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now it is time that we all rise for National Anthem.